Hi, welcome to our Homestead series. We hope this will be of enjoyment and informative. We don't know everything, we don't do everything perfect, but what we do know works for us. In these economic times, people have been talking about a back to the land movement or getting back to a more simple way of life. The transformation from the comforts of city dwelling and our modern way can be a little different going back to the homestead. I won't say complicated, but there are some things that some people should know. So I hope you enjoy this series. Thank you for watching. Okay, so today I'm going to teach you what I know about chainsaws. I'm sure there's a lot of professional people who might have other ideas, and there's nothing wrong with that. Chainsaws are a marvelous invention. They can cause some hazards. I'm trying to gear this towards somebody who has never even owned one, because there's some things you should know about that. Now, what I have here, I have an electric saw and I have my gas saw. There's basically two kinds you're going to end up with. The electric saws are a little safer, a little more user-friendly for the beginner, but they don't have near the cutting power that a gas one will. Gas ones, you can get two different sizes. This is my smaller one that I use for cutting up my skids, and well, as you can see even by the bar length, any smaller trees and whatever, it does a fine job with that. It's nice and light, so it's, you know, when you're using it all day. I do have a bigger one when we had our bigger farm that I bought. This one's quite capable of cutting any hardwood logs, you know. This one, unfortunately, it's a lot heavier, and it's so powerful that when you're cutting skids, it actually just rips them apart. It doesn't, and it throws them all over the place. So I don't use this one very often. If we do end up with a bigger homestead and it has larger trees on it, I might get it fixed up again and use it. As far as brand name goes for chainsaws, all of the hydro companies and most professionals will use Stihl or Husqvarna. I mentioned Homelight in another video. Homelight used to be good. They're many years ago, like if you get an old one from the 70s or something, they're a tougher saw. But Stihl's a good brand name, but you're going to pay a little more for it. If you want to go with the store brand, they should be okay for household use, you know, minimal use. They might give you a little trouble. You may want to find it might actually pay you to have a professional just do some tune-up work on it, and sometimes I wonder by the time you do that, you're best to deal with someone that knows what they're talking about. Something like a chainsaw, if you go to a dealer, make sure the dealer knows what he's doing. I had an experience where I bought this one brand new for $350, and the salesman and the mechanic there really didn't have a clue what they were doing, and this saw barely even, it wouldn't even work, and I was really disappointed having spent that much on it. And we moved, we're in this new village here now, and this fella down the road's a Stihl dealer, and I brought it to him. He did one quick tune-up on it, bit of work, and it's never given me a problem since. So sometimes it is worth going to somebody that really knows what they're doing with this particular type of tool. Now, I don't know how long this video is going to be, because there's a few things I do want to cover in it, being that chainsaws can have some hazards, so it might be a two-part series. I'll do my best. I want to go over now some of the safety things for chainsaws. We'll start with the electric one. Electric ones are usually fairly safe. You're going to see here is what's called a guard. Okay. Now, actually, I was quite surprised on this one that this is what you might call a stationary guard. This one doesn't move or anything. Okay. The whole idea of a guard is when you start working with a chainsaw, sometimes they have a tendency to kick back on you like that. And what can happen is guys in the past with older chainsaws that didn't have a guard at all have, you know, cut their hands here, or that's come up and hit their face or their shoulders. So the whole idea is that it kind of prevents it from, as you can see, it's hitting my hand there. But most of the guards that I've seen are like on this saw here, they lock. Okay. So when you're cutting, and this has happened to me a few times, and you do get a kickback, okay, like that, you can hear that click. What that click does is that locks it. Okay? That will not move anymore. That locks your chain so that even if it comes up and hits you, or if it falls out of your hands, you don't have a chain spinning around so fast, you know, trying to cut your hand open or that. So, whatever reason, our SAE Brilliance approved this one to be the way it is. I will say too, with electric saws, they don't go nearly as fast either. They're a lot slower in how fast they go. make sure you have your cord, proper cord. If it's got 3-prong, put it on, because if you're out cutting wet stuff, and you can get a shock from that. This is only to keep your cords, keep in mind it's electric, so keep it out of mud and everything where you're cutting. If you own a small property and you find yourself cutting up a few limbs here and there, or you're cutting occasional wooden tallets for firewood, electric is fine. They're a lot cheaper. I bought this one from our hardware, Canadian Tire. Poulan's another known name too. They've been pretty good for quality. What did I pay? About $100 for this one. This still I bought almost 10 years ago. It was $350 brand new. And this actually was a medium line for still. You can pay up to $800 for a good still chainsaw. But if you're somebody that's doing a lot of wood, or say you're going to buy a Homestead and you're going to be cutting for a long time, I say it's worth the investment buying a good saw. It really is. Don't be afraid to spend the money on a good one. If this one hadn't given me any more trouble after you worked on it, I would have replaced it and I would have went with a Husqvarna, and I would have bought about a $600 or $700 saw. I have experience with chainsaws that, I bought my share of used ones that you get a day or two out of them and then they won't start. Now another thing I want to go on now about is how to operate your saw. I worked at this call center, and I overheard my friend there sitting beside me talking to his friend there about getting a chainsaw. They were going to buy one, and they were going to cut a tree down for their mother. And I heard them talking, and I asked him, I said, well, where are you getting it? And he said, well, Canadian Tire. I said, okay. I said, just, make sure it runs all right for you and that. And he didn't know, first of all, that he needed bar oil for it, and he didn't know that it takes a fuel mixture. So that's fine. I was glad to help him, because his saw, if he had to put straight gas in it, probably would have lasted 15 minutes to half an hour before the motor burnt out, or the chain would have burnt off first. I'm not sure which one would have been. So here's what I'm going to show you now. Let's start with bar oil. I don't actually have my bar oil. I used it up. So here's another good opportunity then. The purpose of bar oil is to lubricate your chain, inside your bar. There's a groove in here, and it's always spinning, and you can see all the sawdust build up and oil that does tend to build up in here on your saw. The purpose of that is to keep your chain lubricated, and it keeps it cool. If you don't have a chainsaw bar oil, you can use, if you have some around in emergency like I am, because I haven't got it at the store yet, you can use transmission fluid. It's very similar. I don't recommend it forever, but for the kind of cutting I'm doing, it works fine. I've even used motor oil. It'll lubricate it, but it doesn't keep it as cool, and it kind of smells after a while. But where do you put that? Well, each saw is going to be different. In this particular saw, they've got it right up in here. This being electric, of course, doesn't take gas, obviously. So you put your bar oil in here, and some of them now, I want to tell you too, with bar oil, there's two kinds of saws. There is an automatic oiler and a manual oiler. Now, a lot of the older models will be manual, and what that means is as you're cutting, every once in a while, you got to give it a shot of oil for the bar. And sometimes I like manual because it does allow you to lubricate according to conditions. I had this old field and I was trying to cut willows out, and I just wanted them level to the ground. They were too thick for the bush hog. So I had an old bar and an old chain and the mud, but it was great because my old saw had a manual and I could just keep giving the oil all it took, And then other times you don't need as much oil, and well, it's just a waste. But a manual one will give it at a steady pace all the time. Now the thing I like about a manual is, of course, then you don't have to worry about the constant plunging either, right? If you're cutting wet logs, by the way, don't need as much as dry logs and stuff like that. You can adjust it. I don't know if this one here, this particular model, I don't think can. But my bigger one, there's a screw on the bottom. If I can find it, because I haven't adjusted it in a while. I think it's actually underneath my cap here. There's a screw that you can adjust to set it for heavy or light, depending how much you want. If you're cutting dry wood, it's nice to have more oil on your bar. If you're cutting like fresh trees, they're a little, they're wet, right? So you don't need quite as much. So there's that. And I find that every time you fill up, if you're using a gas, for example, I'll show you all this in a sec. Just check your oil. I find that every 2 fill-ups of gas, I have to fill up the oil on this particular saw here. I haven't used this one a whole lot, so I just check it whenever I go to use it, type of thing for that.